All right, we are back. Amateur Hour Sports is back. It's been a long absence. It's been a couple weeks since the Bills lost. We both took it pretty hard, so
Yeah.
we figured, we give it some time, get our weekdays back, and then we'd hit it hard for the Super Bowl. So we got the Super Bowl 54 preview. We got the 49ers at the Chiefs in Miami, Florida, 6:30 Eastern on Fox. I know we're both super excited for this game. I think this game has a lot to offer, both offensively, defensively, for both teams. A lot of stars, a lot of different storylines here that we'll touch on. But before we get into it, anything you want to say to the people? Welcome them back.
Yeah, it's been, a nice little sabbatical from doing these casts. I could speak to both me and Trent. We couldn't even talk for 2 days after the game. Just I had to go right after the game. I just couldn't do anything. I went into the weight room and worked out. I had to go run because I was so mad. But besides that, it's been cool watching the playoffs, and I think it's really been a surprising yet really exciting playoffs. And I think you couldn't pick two better teams to represent each conference in the Super Bowl, especially these two, the elite offense of the Kansas City Chiefs and the elite defense. It's going to be a great matchup. So
Yeah.
excited for the Sunday for sure.
Yeah, well said, well said. Cool. So let's hop right into it. Let's start talking about the Chiefs' offense, which I think, you got the big storyline there. Patrick Mahomes, MVP from last season. He didn't have the MVP season that he had last year, but he still, led his team to the AFC Championship 2 years in a row, and maybe had a more effective overall season. And here they are in the Super Bowl. So I think if you're a Chiefs fan, you got to be pretty happy, even though he's not MVP. They're in the Super Bowl. So
Yeah, how mad could you be, really?
right.
But it's serious though. I mean, the guy, in my opinion, is the best football player I think I've ever seen. He's the most electrifying player, and he plays on one of the most electric offense, which is absolutely unreal. But hitting that MVP, what you brought up was kind of interesting. I actually think that his season this year was better, and he played less games. He only played 14 because we all know he had that patella tendon issue back in earlier in the season. So he was a lot more effective, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He definitely just the way that he extends plays and the way he's responsible for the wins that he has is just makes him the MVP. He could have definitely won this year, especially if Lamar Jackson didn't have such a, statistically incredible year. So I just want to put that out there for sure.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, what makes Mahomes so great, obviously, is his arm strength and his accuracy. But they also have so many weapons on the
Oh yeah.
offensive side of the ball. You got Tyreek Hill, you got Sammy Watkins, you got they just have a stable of receivers. I think you could interchange, any of
Yep.
them. And then you
Hardman
got,
too.
yeah, Nicole Hardman, fast as lightning. They just have so much speed with those three specifically. And then you got Demarcus Robinson and these other playmakers. And then you factor in Travis Kelce, a tight end, who catches everything, is tough, hard nosed, blocks, catches.
Oh yeah.
He can do it all. The complete tight end. They really just have. Well, I guess you can point to the running backs as maybe being the, not up to everywhere else on the field, but they really just don't have a weakness in my mind on offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think having Patrick Mahomes for sure definitely, has empowered some of these, receivers into having such like electrifying careers, especially like Tyreek, coming late draft pick, coming out and just absolutely shining. But these guys are like legit a track team. I mean, you could start a track relay team with these guys. They're all have dynamic speed. But I think the biggest breakdown that I have of the Chiefs offense is you got a guy like Tyreek Hill who can't be guarded. All right, let's just put it out there. He cannot be guarded in man coverage. So if you want to double team him, then that leaves open Hardman, Robinson, and Watkins. But then the X factor is Travis Kelce, because then if you want to play zone, you want to play cover three, not let him beat you over the top. Travis Kelce and Mahomes have just been electrifying in their zone play. They're just on the same page, and that almost like Mahomes gets the ball out so fast against zone that, rushing the defensive rushers are almost, they're not a factor. So
Right.
that's just like unreal. I mean, I don't think we have, and especially having an offensive mind like Andy Reid that just spearheads it, and he knows exactly how effective he can be with that. They're so hard to stop. Yeah, and on top of that, I mean, so think about this. You have a great coverage on all the players. You're playing man, you're playing zone, regardless, and you have great coverage, and you got your rushers. They've rushed too far, so now Mahomes gets to scramble. So now this guy's going out of the pocket, and he's probably got the strongest or second strongest behind Josh an arm in the league, and the guy can just make any throw accurately outside the pocket. It's almost it's 10 times better than Aaron Rodgers back in his prime.
Interesting.
Like that's a hot take, but it's like 10 times better. And so just think about from a coverage standpoint, how do you cover guys for 5 seconds, 6 seconds, and then you have a quarterback who can just thread the needle even if you're on top of him.
Yeah.
So
The
that's just
answer is
my
you
take.
can't. The
Yeah.
answer is you can't. You can't cover people for that long, and that's why we'll touch on a little bit, but having such a strong pass rush that put pressure on Mahomes, and they don't even blitz that much, but the
Yeah.
pressure that the 49ers will be able to bring, I think, is obviously it's going to be the toughest defense Mahomes has faced all season.
Oh, for sure.
But I want to throw some numbers out there for the Chiefs, just to talk about how crazy their offense is, and really just push that point. In the regular season, they averaged 28 points per game, 98 rush yards. They scored in the red zone 54% of their time. In the postseason, so this is when the games are getting harder. The defenses are getting better. Everything's supposed to be harder for the Chiefs. They're averaging 43 points per game. They're averaging 115 rush yards, and they're scoring in the red zone nearly 82% of the time.
That's unreal.
They are putting up numbers,
Yeah.
crazy numbers in the postseason against. They played the Texans defense and then they played the Titans defense. They're both pretty solid defenses, but that just goes to show you how effective, like you said, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, the whole combination, the whole thing is just grooving right now at the perfect time for the Chiefs.
Oh, yeah.
And really hard
For
to
sure.
guard, really hard to stop if you're the 49ers.
I got a question for you, Trent.
Sure.
So, me and you were talking before this, and you brought up a good point, and I want to hear more about what you have to say about this. Do you think it's more effective? Because obviously the Chiefs' run game is probably their weak point. Both rushers haven't reached over 500 yards in the whole regular season, Williams or LaShawn McCoy. So is it more effective to have multiple good running backs, like maybe not elite, or one good rusher? Because you see the success the Chiefs are having, and they don't really have a one running back who's the guy. And then you see the Cowboys who, didn't utilize Zeke right, I guess. So, I mean, what's your take on that?
Obviously, it depends on the situation. I think when you look at it with let's say the Titans and Derrick Henry, Tannehill had a great season, yes, but when it came playoff time, they were so one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And you saw it last week when they did play the Chiefs. When they were running the ball with Derrick Henry and it wasn't working, they were getting stopped. Tannehill, I mean, it just took them out of their funk, and Tannehill couldn't really will them to victory. Yeah. And you sort of knew if they could stop Derrick Henry,
that was game.
Tannehill wasn't going to beat them. But I mean, the counterpoint is Derrick Henry led them the whole way. Basically, he had the most rushing yards in the league, and was really effective, and that helped. Ryan Tannehill just have a really super efficient season, and putting up a lot of touchdowns, low interceptions, high completion percentage. So when you have a guy like Derrick Henry, yes, I mean, I don't think you can argue having a star running back is not an advantage. But when you take these two teams that are in the Super Bowl, for example, like you said with the Chiefs, they got Damian Williams, LaShawn McCoy, Darrell Williams, Darwin Thompson. I mean, they're all just sort of names. I mean, no one really sticks out to you. And then 49ers, it's the same thing. It's, Tevin Coleman, Matt Breida, Raheem Mostert, who just, has been popping off lately. I think having more weapons is never a bad thing. If you have
Oh yeah.
three running backs that can do the same job as one running back and making sure they're always healthy and refreshed, I think that's an advantage to any team. I mean, imagine if Derrick Henry had a spell running back that really could
Yeah.
lessen the burden. I think obviously his numbers would drop off, but his efficiency would still be there, and
Oh yeah. Yeah.
maybe they could make that push, in the
He
game
would he
last
would
week.
be more effective instead of like
Exactly.
yeah. I actually have a good follow-on question. No, seeing the success that the 49ers are having with that style of offense, which we'll hit a little bit later, but you brought up Tevin Coleman, Raheem Mostert, and Breida, and then you have the Chiefs offense, which has branded their style as passing, pass first, basically kind of like run pass option with passing the whole time. Which offense do you think? Because both teams made it to the Super Bowl, had effective years. Which way do you think the league is moving? Like, do you think each way is kind of gonna kind of come together, and you're gonna have a ton of teams that are gonna try to emulate that style, and a couple of teams gonna try to emulate, the Chiefs, or are we gonna switch? What do you think is gonna happen with this league?
I think this goes back to this debate has been gone on forever, I feel like, but it's playing to your or coaching to your players' strengths. If you have a stable of running backs and a quarterback, like Jimmy Garoppolo, who isn't going to necessarily kill you with his arm, like Mahomes would, then that's your style of offense. You need
Yeah,
to stick to that kind of offense. If you have a generational quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, like obviously you're going to want to pass more. But like coaches who will um, you know, come in and just try to only use their system when they don't have, let's say, they have Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback and they're trying to do this Andy Reid style Patrick Mahomes offense. Like I don't know that. I mean, maybe Jimmy Garoppolo could. Maybe that's a bad example, but you can't force that on the players. You have to work with
yeah,
what you got, basically. And I think you and I have both played enough football and know from experience that if you try to force something that you don't have the scheme or the players for, it's just straight up not gonna
yeah,
work. So
yeah,
I think basically to answer your original question, it depends on who you got.
yeah. I
There's
100% agree.
no one way to play football. There's no one way to run an offense, and it's
Yeah,
kind of cool that we have the opposing offenses here because
yeah.
it really just shows you can do it either way.
It's kind of crazy because Andy Reid's been in the league, as a coach, in offensive head coaching roles more, and he's spearheading, like kind of like the more millennial style of football, throwing,
Right.
all that kind of stuff. And then you have a guy so young, Kyle Shanahan, who's kind of like spearheading this three-headed monster offense and run and creative, ways to get the balls to his playmakers. So, yeah, I definitely think the league's going in a kind of interesting direction with these polarizing, you know, styles.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see, especially with these young coaches like coming into the league that are going to try to, be like Kyle Shanahan. So maybe the league is going to go maybe more towards running because you'll get some young coaches and they'll be in the league longer, obviously. So I don't know. It's just a kind of interesting thought if you put it in perspective.
Yeah. No, and I think it's great for the game of football to have, nobody just wants to see passing the whole time. No one just wants to see running the whole time. So, having both is a good blend and good for football in my mind. All right, so let's get back on track. Let's talk about the 49ers defense. We talked about the Chiefs offense, how electric they are. The 49ers, I think it starts up front with that D line. They have some very fast linebackers that can, make tackles, run sideline to sideline. And then they got a pretty solid secondary, led by Richard Sherman. So let's start it with the D line. What do you like from them, and who's somebody that sticks out to you over there?
Yeah, in the playoffs, I've just been observing Nick Bosa on defense, and I mean, he's just been so impressive. And this is coming from an offensive guy. I mean, I watched him rush up field on a, like say a draw, and he'll like rush up field and he'll still make the tackle like 5, 6 yards downfield. I mean, the guy makes effort plays,
Mm,
and I think that is one of the keys to their defense. That just like brings the juice. Like you see a guy chase down a quarterback who's on a rollout, like he's done a few times this postseason, and strip sack. I mean, the guy, he's a difference maker, and he just has the effort. It never seems like he stops. I mean, he just is consistently playing, and I just find that so impressive. And then Eric Armstead, he's been playing great too. He had 10 sacks this year. I mean, he's a difference maker, and he plays, outside and interior. So those guys just like they're so dynamic up front and big. I'm sure you played defense more. You've been definitely observing Nick Bosa. Do you think the same things as I've been seeing?
Yeah, yeah. You know what's just crazy about Nick Bosa is that this is his first season. He's only going to get better, and he's already so dominant. He had 16 tackles for loss. I mean, the guy just, like you said, their effort plays. He's all over the field. And the whole D line, I mean, they know how to create pressure without even blitzing.
Yeah,
And that's so important in today's football, especially going against Patrick Mahomes.
yeah,
You want as many guys in coverage as you can,
yeah.
but still being able to get it to the quarterback. So, and they have their front four: Eric Armstead, Nick Bosa, DeForest Buckner, D Ford. Those four are their best pass rushers. But then they also have so much depth. They have D tackles that can.
Solomon Thomas coming off the bench.
Solomon Thomas was I think a third overall pick a couple years ago.
Yeah,
Sheldon Day I think has made a couple plays in this postseason. Like they have depth, and that allows them to rotate guys, keep them fresh. Sort of like what we were talking about with running backs. And that's going to be a huge advantage, especially in Miami in the heat. Even though it's played at night, it'll still be hot. I'm sure humid.
oh, humid, yeah, for sure.
So that'll be key. That'll be a key matchup, I think, going into the game.
Yeah, I think getting Quan Alexander to go to some of the linebackers now.
Yeah.
Getting Quan Alexander back from his pectoral injury, that he suffered the same injury as J.J. Watt, essentially, and getting him back for the postseason is huge for them. I mean, it just gives them that much more depth on guys. And their linebackers, they fly. They're sideline to sideline guys. They're going to have to be great coverage guys this weekend for sure. It's definitely going to put a strain on them, but we'll see. I mean, I'm sure they're capable of coverage, just running sideline to sideline, triggering when Mahomes leaves the pocket, getting some pressure on him. These guys are going to have a huge day, and it's going to be interesting to see which one, what offense or defense comes out on top for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm looking at their tackling leaders right now, and Fred Warner led the team in tackles with 118 in the regular season, and then they have another linebacker, Dre Greenlaw, with 87. And I'm looking at their ages here. This is what's just crazy to me. This whole defense is so young. They're going to be so good for such a long time.
Yeah.
So Fred Warner is only 23. Dre Greenlaw is 22. Even
Greenlaw's a rookie.
Yeah,
It's his first year.
Even Quan Alexander is 25, and you got Bosa who's 22. You got DeForest Buckner who's 25. Eric Armstead 26. Like all these guys, they're in their mid to early 20s. They're playing at such an elite level right now. It's actually kind of scary for the rest of the NFL.
It's a little bit even more scary. They had Reuben Foster back in the day. The linebacker from Alabama for all you folks. He was a first round pick, and he had some questionable character issues, but the guy, was a freak at Alabama. And think about if he stayed in and kept his career on track, they would have had him too as a rotating end, which is just kudos to John Lynch. What a job he's done putting together that defense, trading for D Ford before the season. A lot of people were, questioning that move and a lot of other moves, and it's just all coming together. So he's put together and signing Richard Sherman off of a Achilles injury.
Yeah, just playing off Richard Sherman. I think he's having honestly one of his best years, and he's playing his best football right now in the playoffs. So it is going to be a tough matchup, him versus Tyreek Hill. Not that they're going to match up one-on-one, but just having the speed that's on the other side. Then you got. Richard Sherman's 31 years old. I'm not saying he can't run with the best of them, but it's going to be a long day for Sherman in that secondary trying to keep up with all that speed that the Chiefs got.
For sure.
Cool. So let's transition to the 49ers offense, who are led by Jimmy Garoppolo, who's in his third year with the 49ers, coming off his best season in his career. for sure. He had nearly 4,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, 13 picks. And honestly, the 27 touchdowns, he had more than Mahomes in the regular season, and Mahomes did miss a couple games. But overall, we had touched on it throughout the season, him being a game manager and whatnot. And it was, but I think in every one of those big games that they had, I think of the Saints game specifically, he answered the bell, and he was awesome. He put up like 400 yards, 4 or 5 touchdowns. Like when he needs to, he can win the game for the 49ers, which is really impressive and scary if you're a Chiefs fan. And he also completed 69% of his completion percentage, which is a nice completion percentage.
That's really good.
Yeah, close to 70. Very good. Touching on the running backs, we mentioned it earlier, but just to summarize again, I think Raheem Mostert has been their go-to guy this postseason. He had over 200 yards in one of his playoff games, and he really solidified himself, I think, especially with Tevin Coleman going down with an injury last game they played. I think he should be healthy for this, but Mostert really solidified himself as the number one back, and he's got a lot of speed, good vision. The second he passed the line of scrimmage, he's gone. And, the Chiefs are going to have to wrap up well against him. And like we said, they have other options too if they need them. So running back, I think, especially with Kyle Shanahan's offense, what we've seen so far is a huge position. They're definitely going to run the ball. They're going to try to run it, what the Titans couldn't do against the Chiefs. They're going to try to do that against them. So moving on from there, running backs, they also have some good receivers, some solid receivers, and a really good tight end. Let's start with the receivers, though. They got Deebo Samuel, who's a rookie this year. I think he's electric when he gets the ball, whether it's in the run game, pass game. You want the ball in his hands if you're the 49ers. They also brought over Emmanuel Sanders in the trade this year, midseason trade, which I think has worked out great for them. And he adds, sort of honestly like an older Samuel. But, still can get open with his routes. He still has clean routes and gets open. And, Jimmy G's loves him so far. And also a guy who's kind of sneaky, Kendrick Bourne. I remember in that Packers game, he made a couple plays early. Maybe it was the Vikings game. He made a couple plays early, though. And I was like, dang, like that. I've, never really watched him. Don't really know much about him, but he was making some plays. So they got some playmakers. And then I'll let you take the tight end position because I know you love this guy. He's a dynamic threat.
So, just to hit on, I think Deebo Samuel is, that guy was, second round pick coming out of last year's draft. I think a lot of people kind of were like, who is this guy under the radar? And they've just found a niche in him in the offense. Kyle Shanahan has just utilized him on those end arounds, the wide receiver reverses.
Yep.
And he's just been electric. Just get the ball in his hands and let him make plays. And he's been, proven, like, especially in, the playoffs, like how valuable he is to that offense. But like to take over for my man, George Kittle, what a guy. I mean, George Kittle, like seriously though, he's the best tight end in football right now. He's absolutely the most well-rounded guy you could ask for on a team. The thing that makes him the best, in my opinion, is he can block. I mean, he gets down and dirty in the trenches. He can block those edge rushers and those linebackers, create holes for those running backs.